Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. The sun had barely risen, casting a golden hue over the quiet street as I padded down the driveway to retrieve the morning paper. The world was still wrapped in a sleepy silence, the only sounds the occasional chirp of a bird or the distant hum of an early morning car. I was lost in the comfort of routine, thinking about the mundane tasks that lay ahead. As I reached for the newspaper, Mrs. Peterson's voice cut through the calm. "Good morning, Mr. Thomas," she called out cheerfully from her porch across the street. Her voice always carried a distinct melody of neighborly warmth, but today, there was something more, a hint of excitement that made me pause. I looked up and offered a polite smile. "Morning, Mrs. Peterson. How's everything?" "Oh, just fine," she said, adjusting her floral apron with a sense of satisfaction. "But you know, I saw Emily at the cafe yesterday with a young man." A jolt of surprise made me freeze mid-step. I tried to mask my shock with a casual demeanor. "Emily was at the cafe? Did she mention anything about it?" Mrs. Peterson's eyes twinkled with the thrill of sharing gossip. "No, she didn't say a word. But they were quite close, if you catch my drift. It didn't look like a business meeting." My heart began to race, each beat a reminder of the unsettling implications. "Close? What do you mean by that?" "Well," Mrs. Peterson leaned in conspiratorially, "they were sitting very close, talking intimately. I couldn't hear much, but it seemed quite cozy. I just thought you should know." I swallowed hard, trying to process the unexpected tidbit. Emily had always been open about her plans, often mentioning her frequent visits to the cafe for her writing. But now, every detail seemed tinged with suspicion. "Thank you for letting me know, Mrs. Peterson." Her face softened with sympathy. "I hope it's nothing, Mr. Thomas. I really do. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation." I nodded, though the reassurance didn't ease the growing knot in my stomach. "I appreciate it." As Mrs. Peterson waved goodbye, I walked back into the house with the newspaper forgotten under my arm. The weight of her words settled heavily on me. Emily was often the center of my world, and this new information felt like a crack in the foundation of our life together. Inside, the smell of brewing coffee filled the kitchen, but I barely noticed. I poured myself a cup mechanically, my mind racing. Emily's behavior had been normal, or so I thought. I couldn't shake the image of her and this Lucas from my mind. I needed to know more. I had to find out what was really happening before my imagination turned every innocent detail into a glaring sign of betrayal. Grabbing my coat, I decided to head to the cafe. The sun was climbing higher in the sky, and with it, the urgency of my concern. As I walked towards the cafe, my thoughts swirled with questions and doubts. What had Emily been doing with this man? And what did it mean for us? The cafe was a cozy, sunlit haven with a reputation for its rich coffee and homemade pastries. It was Emily's favorite spot, a place she often retreated to when she needed a break from the routine of daily life. As I pushed open the door, the bell chimed softly, announcing my arrival. The scent of fresh coffee and baked goods wafted over me, but it did little to soothe my nerves. I scanned the room quickly, searching for Emily and the mysterious man, Lucas. The cafe was fairly quiet for a mid-morning, with only a few patrons scattered around. My eyes landed on the corner table where Mrs. Peterson had mentioned seeing them. There they were. Emily was seated across from Lucas, their faces close together, engrossed in a conversation. Lucas's hand was resting on top of Emily's, and their body language was intimate, far more so than a casual meeting would warrant. My breath caught in my throat as I approached the table, my steps feeling unsteady and deliberate. "Emily," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I reached their table. She looked up, her face registering surprise and a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. "Oh, hi. I didn't expect to see you here." Lucas glanced up, his expression shifting to one of guarded curiosity. "Can we help you with something?" I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my emotions in check. "I just need to talk to Emily." It's important. Emily's eyes darted between me and Lucas, and I could see the tension in her posture. She started to rise, but Lucas's hand on her arm stopped her. Is something wrong? Emily asked, her voice low and tinged with concern. I don't know, I said, my frustration bubbling up. Mrs. Peterson saw you here with Lucas and mentioned you seemed close. I didn't expect this. Emily's cheeks flushed, and she glanced at Lucas, who remained silent. It's not what you think, she said quickly, her voice faltering. Lucas and I have been working on something together. It's not. Working on what? I interrupted, my voice rising. What could be so important that you didn't think to mention it to me? Lucas stood up, his demeanor becoming more assertive. Perhaps it's best if we explain this in private, he suggested. This is a sensitive matter. Emily nodded, her eyes pleading with me. Please, let's talk somewhere else. I'll explain everything. We moved to a quieter corner of the cafe, away from the curious glances of other patrons. Emily took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly. I should have told you sooner. Lucas is involved in a project that, well, it's complicated. Lucas spoke up, his tone steady but serious. This project is about developing software to uncover illegal activities and corruption. Emily has been helping me gather data for it. I felt a surge of confusion and anger. And you didn't think to tell me about this? How long have you been involved in this? Emily's eyes met mine, full of regret. It's been going on for months. We were trying to keep it under wraps because it's dangerous. We didn't want to put you at risk. Dangerous? I repeated, trying to wrap my mind around it. Why didn't you come to me? Why all the secrecy? Lucas's face was grim as he explained, we've been working on this to expose some very powerful people. There have been threats and attempts to sabotage our work. We didn't want anyone to get hurt, especially you. Emily reached out and took my hand. I'm sorry. I should have been honest with you from the start. I didn't want to put you in the middle of this. The weight of their words settled heavily on me. The betrayal I had feared was not about an affair but something far more complex and dangerous. I was overwhelmed by the realization that Emily's secret involvement was driven by a cause she believed in deeply, not by infidelity. As we sat there, trying to process the gravity of the situation, I realized that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. The truth was more complicated than I had imagined, and understanding it would require patience and trust, both of which seemed in short supply at that moment. The small cafe's quiet corner felt like a world apart from the chaos that swirled in my mind. Emily and I sat at a table with Lucas, the atmosphere heavy with the weight of unspoken concerns. The sun filtering through the windows cast a warm glow, but it did little to lift the tension that hung between us. Lucas took a deep breath, his expression serious. Look, I know this is a lot to take in. Let me explain in more detail. Emily, why don't you start? Emily nodded, her gaze shifting nervously between Lucas and me. Okay. So, Lucas and I have been working on a project involving technology designed to uncover corruption. It's not just about exposing individual wrongdoers, it's about bringing down entire networks of illegal activity. I leaned forward, trying to grasp the full scope of what they were saying. But why the secrecy? If this is such an important project, why keep it from me? Lucas interjected before Emily could respond. The project involves sensitive data and has attracted attention from some very dangerous people. We've received threats, and we've had to take measures to protect ourselves and the information we're working with. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper as she added, we were trying to keep you out of it to keep you safe. Lucas thought it was better if you didn't know anything, especially since we've been getting closer to revealing something big. I ran a hand through my hair, the frustration and confusion mingling in a storm of emotions. So, what exactly are you working on? What have you discovered? Lucas looked at Emily, who gave a slight nod. We've been developing software that can analyze vast amounts of data from various sources. It helps identify patterns of corruption and illegal activities that aren't immediately obvious. But it's not just about identifying these activities, it's about gathering solid evidence to support legal actions against those involved. Emily continued, we've been gathering data from various sources, including leaked documents and insider information. It's been a lot of work, and the project has grown more complicated and dangerous than we anticipated. I took a deep breath, trying to absorb everything they were saying. This sounds like a massive undertaking. But why didn't you just tell me? Why did you have to hide everything? Emily's eyes filled with tears as she reached across the table, her hand trembling. I didn't want to worry you. I thought if you knew, you'd be caught in the crossfire. I was afraid for your safety, and I didn't want you to be involved in this dangerous game. Lucas's expression softened as he looked at Emily. We've been working under tight security measures, trying to keep everything contained. It was never our intention to deceive you. But the threats we've faced have made it clear that we can't afford any slip-ups. I glanced around the cafe, trying to make sense of the gravity of their situation. So, what's the next step? What happens now? Lucas took a moment before responding. We're at a critical juncture. We've gathered a substantial amount of evidence, and we're close to exposing some major players. But we need to proceed carefully. We're planning to release our findings soon, but it's crucial that we continue to protect ourselves and the integrity of the data. Emily squeezed my hand, her voice choked with emotion. I understand if you're angry or hurt. I just want you to know that my intentions were never to deceive you. I was trying to protect you. The revelation was overwhelming. Emily and Lucas's project was far more complex and risky than I had imagined. The secrecy was not about betrayal but about navigating a dangerous path with high stakes. As I looked at them, I realized that our lives were now intertwined in ways I had never anticipated. Okay, I said, trying to steady my voice. I need to process this. But if this project is as important as you say, then I'll support you in any way I can. But we need to be honest with each other from now on. Emily nodded, relief evident in her eyes. Thank you. We'll keep you informed and involved in any way that doesn't jeopardize your safety. Lucas extended his hand, and I shook it, the gesture symbolizing a tentative trust and a commitment to face the challenges ahead together. As we left the cafe, the weight of the situation settled heavily on my shoulders, but a small glimmer of understanding began to emerge amidst the uncertainty. The days that followed were a blur of anxious waiting and uneasy conversations. Emily and I tried to rebuild our trust, but the shadow of secrecy and betrayal still loomed over us. Lucas continued to work on the project, but his presence became a constant reminder of the uncertainty we faced. Despite Emily's reassurances, something gnawed at me, making me question the true nature of the project. One evening, as I was working late in my study, I noticed a file on Emily's laptop that Lucas had left behind. The file was password protected, but after some effort, I managed to gain access. What I found inside made my blood run cold, documents and data that seemed to be deliberately manipulated. My heart pounded as I sifted through the files, discovering inconsistencies and altered information that suggested Lucas might be hiding something. The more I examined, the clearer it became that the project might have been a cover for Lucas's own illicit activities. I needed to confront him, but I had to be careful. The next morning, I met with Lucas in the cafe, the place where so much had begun. Lucas was already seated at our usual table, his expression serious as he sipped his coffee. When I arrived, he looked up, a hint of concern in his eyes. "Morning," I said, my voice steady but with an underlying tension. "We need to talk." Lucas's gaze sharpened. "About what?" I took out a printout of the manipulated documents, placing them on the table. "I found these on Emily's laptop. They show discrepancies in the data and suggest that the project isn't what it was supposed to be." Lucas's face paled as he glanced at the papers. "Where did you get these?" "I did some digging," I replied, my voice firm. "And it looks like you've been using the project to cover your own tracks. The data is tampered with." Lucas's eyes flickered with a mix of anger and desperation. "You don't understand. It's not what it seems." "It looks pretty clear to me," I said, my frustration rising. "You've been manipulating the data to protect yourself. You've involved Emily in this mess, and now she's in danger because of your actions. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, his expression conflicted. I didn't intend for things to go this way. The project started with good intentions, but it became more complicated than I anticipated. I didn't want Emily or anyone else to get hurt. I crossed my arms, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing heavily on me. What about the threats? Were they real, or was it all part of your plan to keep everyone in the dark? Lucas hesitated, then looked away. There were threats, but not all of them came from external sources. I made some bad decisions along the way, and now it's spiraled out of control. I'm sorry for dragging Emily into this. The truth was painfully clear. Lucas's project had been a cover for his own corrupt activities, and Emily had been an unwitting accomplice. The deception had gone deeper than I had realized, and Lucas's motives were far from altruistic. Later that day, Emily and I sat together in our living room, trying to piece together the fragments of our shattered trust. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from tears. I saw Lucas this morning, I said quietly. He admitted to manipulating the data. The project was a cover for his own wrongdoing. Emily's face crumpled with anguish. I didn't know. I believed in the project, in what we were trying to achieve. But now I see that I was used. I took her hand, my heart aching for her. You were caught in the middle of something much larger than you realized. I should have trusted you more, but the secrecy made it impossible. Emily nodded, her voice choked with emotion. I'm so sorry. I should have been more upfront with you. I didn't want to put you in danger, but I never meant for things to get this bad. We sat in silence, the weight of the revelations settling over us. Lucas faced serious legal consequences for his actions, and Emily was cleared of any wrongdoing. The road to rebuilding our lives would be long and arduous, but we were determined to face it together. As we worked through the aftermath, the betrayal and deceit gradually gave way to a renewed commitment to honesty and trust. The path ahead was uncertain, but with each step, we began to heal and rebuild, finding a way to move forward from the shadows of the past.